Good evening, everyone. I hope you're having another great night. Welcome to another Orland Park Public Library virtual program. Tonight we have back again Andy Pinelli, and today we have Solutions to Climate Change, an interactive presentation. Tonight we are going to test your ideas for slowing climate change by entering them into a simulator with the guidance of the presenter. We're going to discuss why an action may or may not be as effective as you may have thought it would have been. So, without further ado, I'm going to hand it off to Andy.
Oh, thank you, Ariana, and thanks everybody for joining tonight. I want to thank Ariana and the Orland Park Public Library for having us this evening. And I'm leading a chapter of Citizens Climate Education here in the Chicago South Suburbs area. It's a not-for-profit, nonpartisan grassroots organization that works to try to educate folks on climate solutions and good climate legislation. Today we'll talk about climate change, and I'll show you a really great new tool, a powerful new climate simulator that's been 7 years in development and only just became available in the last year. And we'll use this tool together to gain insights to best solve the problem. Let me just share screen and show you what the simulator looks like. So the simulator will look like this. It's a very complicated piece of software that does about 16,000 calculations in a millisecond. And it takes our projections of growth of population, GDP per capita, the energy intensity of the energy that we use, and it multiplies those things together and determines what kind of carbon we'll be emitting to generate future economic growth. And it does so by virtue of how much coal we use in the brown area, how much oil we use, which is the red area of this graph, how much natural gas in blue, how much renewable energy in green, biofuel in pink, and that little sliver of a line is nuclear up top. And we can change our mix by changing our assumptions of how we're going to use fuel in the future and which fuels we're going to use, or how which ones we're going to emphasize and which ones we're going to de-emphasize. And we can play around with transportation sector efficiency and electrification, building energy efficiency and electrification. We can tinker with population and economic growth, deforestation, afforestation. We can, all of these things have an impact on carbon and how much carbon is going to be emitted. And this is kind of the business as usual case, and it drives a certain amount of temperature increase towards the year 2100 there. So this En-ROADS simulator from MIT is really a breakthrough in providing a model that's easy to use. It can generate output very similar to supercomputers, and it does it in milliseconds rather than hours and days. And it gives educators and policymakers a great new tool to get the job done in pursuing their efforts. So and it does that while utilizing the best available science by the International Energy Agency and the IPCC and other credible organizations. So this model tonight that we're going to be using is calibrated to a middle of the road set of assumptions. It's not overly optimistic or overly pessimistic. And we'll have about 24 different actions that we can try to model that you might suggest on there. So a little bit about myself. I got my BA and MBA from Notre Dame. I've spent 3 decades with Fortune 500 companies, leading product development and innovation. Um, uh, and by the way, I'm confident that we can innovate ourselves out of this current problem that we have with climate. And I'm currently working with Citizens Climate Lobby to encourage Congress to act on climate change and meet regularly with the US representatives along with other volunteers in our organization. I'd like to just share for a moment some of the history that put me on a path of being an engaged citizen on this subject. Started diving as a teenager. I've dove all over the Western Hemisphere. And since I started diving, about half of the world's coral reefs are now dead. Some of those reefs were 1,000 years old. 2 main culprits are warming waters from climate change. These reefs live in a very narrow temperature range and always have. And of the billions of tons of extra CO2 that we pump into the sky each year, half of it almost is absorbed into the ocean, which makes it more acidic, and that damages the reefs. So experts say the remaining reefs will be gone in 30 years and at the current pace of decline. And while I hope my grandchildren can grow up to dive these reefs, this goes beyond my favorite pastime in trying to save that. Coral reefs are the ocean's nurseries, and 1/4 of the ocean's species depend on these reefs. And 1 billion people get some part of their daily protein from the oceans. So if we lose the reefs, we lose the biodiversity, we weaken the ecology, and people will struggle for food. Now, I'm going to just touch base on, there may be some folks in our audience tonight that don't accept the consensus science out there on climate change. That's okay. I'm not here to defend the science, but I wanted to level set everybody on what that science is and just take about 90 seconds to do that. So we all know about the greenhouse effect. Up and swirling around in the upper atmosphere are naturally occurring CO2 emissions, methane, we've got nitrous oxide, and we've got water vapor. And this greenhouse gas layer lets the solar energy from the sun in, it heats up the earth, and then the earth emits the heat back out as IR energy, and that gets trapped by that greenhouse gas layer. And that's a very good thing, because the earth would be about 60 degrees cooler if we didn't have that greenhouse gas layer. But over the course of the Industrial Revolution, we have put a lot of additional CO2 into the atmosphere and other greenhouse gases. And what that's done is it's add about 48% more CO2 into the atmosphere. It's more CO2 than at any time that we've been able to detect in the last 800,000 years. And what the consensus science is telling us is that these CO2 and greenhouse gas emissions are the real driver towards the climate change that we've been experiencing. These very highly reputable scientific organizations, NASA, NOAA, the National Academies of Science, the American Meteorological Society, and I could name off a dozen others. These folks will all put on their websites what they think this is driving the majority of climate change that we're experiencing. So we have to assume that there's at least some credibility to that. What I'd like to just talk about is that the greenhouse gas emissions, and primarily CO2 here, which is about 70% or more of the problem. If we look at the last 100 years, what's happened is the dramatic increase in how much coal we're burning, how much oil we're burning, natural gas, and also land use changes. A lot of in agriculture and in deforestation is driven the that CO2 emissions number way up there. And what that's resulted in is in about, if we look back over the last 120 years to the turn of the last century, about a 1 degree increase centigrade, nearly 2 degrees Fahrenheit in average global temperature. And that may not seem like much, but over water, it's cooler, so it's going to be hotter over land. And in some areas, it's going to be twice as warm, and other areas not nearly as warm. So it's a trend that has some significant impacts in terms of what we're seeing today. And I get the argument that the climate is always changing, but when we look over the last 40 years to what the Arctic and the poles were, we see a lot more ice, and sunlight reflects off of that ice, and about 90% of it goes back into outer space. When the temperature's warm, we've got a lot more blue water, so the sunlight's hitting the blue water and absorbing, and that gives us a negative feedback loop here that keeps eroding the ice. Salinity issues can affect currents, which drive our weather patterns. When that ice melts on land, it raises sea levels. And if it gets too warm, the permafrost melts and it can release enormous amounts of methane into the atmosphere. So these are, I think it was the NOAA that said, this is about 100 times faster what's happening now than anything we would consider normal. Now, there's cost to that. If we look back over that same 40-year period from 1980 to 2019, this is the number of billion-dollar storm events, and that's inflation adjusted, that we've experienced over the last 40 years. And there's quite a nasty trend going on here. The number of billion-dollar storm events, or we should say natural disaster events that have taken place, because this includes wildfires, droughts, flooding, as well as severe storms and hurricane damage. They've increased 400%, and not only in the number, but in the total dollar volume of damage that we've experienced, and that's inflation adjusted. So we've got this nasty trend going on as a result of just that 2 degree temperature change. And where the line is headed in a business as usual forecast, if you look at the dozen or so supercomputer models that are out there modeling climate, they'll predict that the temperature in the year 2100 will grow from about 3 to 4.5 degrees centigrade. Our model is showing 3.6 degrees centigrade. Again, doesn't seem like much, but that's 6.5, probably in the 6 to 7.5 degree Fahrenheit temperature. But like we said, it could be 2 degrees in some places, 12 degrees in others. And let's not forget that the evaporation of moisture in soil and vegetation increases exponentially with temperature. So we saw a lot of forest fires in Australia and the US this last summer. That's only going to get worse. I also would like to mention that the temperature, the sustained temperature of the Earth hasn't been over 3 degrees centigrade in about 10 million years. The last time it was, there were crocodiles in the Arctic area of the world. So this is very unusual where we're headed, and it's not good. So we talked about all the bad things that happen as a result of increased carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. We don't need to repeat that. But, just one example of this. This is a picture of Florida, and I think this was a National Geographic survey of the estimated damage projected in the year 2100, $390 billion due to flooding and sea level rise. That is one state. We have 16 coastal states. So there's a multiplier effect, enormous amounts of potential damage there to be concerned about. As a matter of fact, worldwide, Moody's Analytics put the number at potentially $69 trillion in a business as usual scenario by the year 2100. So there's a lot of momentum to do something about climate change. We're not talking about oh, is it a hoax so much anymore? I don't hear that in the halls of Congress like I did 2.5, 3 years ago. It's now more of a discussion of what should we do. So in talking about our model tonight, let me just tell you a little bit more about our climate model. So this is it's a systems dynamic model. It is also what's referred to as an integrated assessment model, and it's calibrated to a half a dozen of those highly reputable recognized supercomputer models, the model that we'll be using tonight. There are different models that are used in different countries, and this model is calibrated to the output of some of those models. But it also, these integrated assessment models, what they do is they look at land use patterns, technology trends, energy usage trends and costs, infrastructure availability, and agricultural inputs. And then they try to model a range of kind of not necessarily predictions, but likely scenarios. Models don't predict the future. They just kind of give us a likelihood of different scenarios there. So here's our model again. And while we're looking at this, just a few more details on what we're going to be doing here. So each time we can move a lever, we can try to discourage coal, for instance, or we could even use more coal, or we could try to discourage other fossil fuel usage. And our primary tool to discourage it is by putting a tax on those. Likewise, we could tax or subsidize bioenergy, renewable energy, nuclear energy, which is carbon-free, has its own set of problems, but it is carbon-free pollution. Or we could even talk about modeling some new zero carbon type of, like a thorium fission or nuclear fusion technology, investing in that. We can, instead of taxing the products, we could put a tax on the emissions of all fossil fuel products. We can tackle the electrification of the transport industry and energy efficiency, the same in building and industry, electrify or work on efficiencies. And then we also have a methane lever here for both agriculture and industrial methane emissions. Okay, that's not from burning natural gas. This is natural gas that leaks in the course of industry like fracking or agriculture. We talked about trying to limit deforestation or planting more trees like Trump's trillion tree program. And there's also technology that's not cost effective today, but there are technologies that can try to capture carbon emissions. So we can talk about those, and I'd like to have you just start thinking, because we're going to ask you to make some suggestions. What actions have you seen people taking, or your groups that you're involved with, or have you seen states taking action that you think would be good for the world to take, or different countries? And offer those up as suggestions. And we'll be asking you what your expectations are. What do you think the impact will be? We want to make sure that when we pull up the model, you can see this 3.6 degrees, that you move your gallery view around, so you can see that, because we're going to be watching as we move the dials what the impact is on our energy inputs, and what the impact is on our net greenhouse gas emissions as we play with different ideas on what to do. So while I'm thinking, or while I'm pulling up the model here, I'm going to stop share for a minute and pull up the model, and either in the chat box, or you can start putting some ideas down, or you can call out some ideas. I would ask if there's any folks on the call tonight that are from Citizens Climate Lobby, hold off on your favorite suggestions for a while till others get some of their ideas out there on the table. But you can either shout them out, and let's make sure that you've got your name on there, because we might have a follow-up question for you, either in the chat box or and I don't have visibility to the gallery view, so I'm going to ask Ariana to help me with who's making the suggestions, so in case there's any questions, so that we can clarify those. But let me share screen again and pull up the simulator as you're putting suggestions in the chat box, or thinking about what you think the best solution for people to take is. Let's see here. That's the PowerPoint. Okay. All right, Ariana, can you see the simulator up here?
Yes.
Okay, so as I was mentioning, watch the primary sources of energy graph, watch the net emissions line here. As we tinker with some of the knobs, we can make the world hotter, or we can make it cooler by virtue of different knobs and levers and suggestions that you'll be making here, and model it. And just to lift the hood for a second on this wonderful tool, what's driving it is, we have loaded in here global population growth from the United Nations. We've got GDP per capita projections from the World Bank. We have energy intensity projections from GDP, and the carbon intensity projections. We've done a good job. You can see how the carbon intensity of our energy has been coming down, as well as the energy intensity of our GDP, as we've built more efficient cars, used more efficient lighting. So we're on the right path here. But our CO2, when you multiply all these together, you get our CO2 emissions from energy, and that's what's driving our end of century temperature here as we move from 2020 to 2100. I'm just going to, and then all of the rest of the tools in the model are related to system dynamics principles that are loaded in to that as well. So let me just go back to our main view here and see what kind of suggestions have been coming in. Ariana, anything in the chat on suggestions of what we should do?
Yes, there is one question here.
Yeah.
Let's see. The question asks, why can't we all just stop eating animals and thereby change our agricultural system that is fossil fueled, endangered, that has caused the dead zone in the Gulf of Mexico from growing grains to feed animals instead of feeding people?
Okay, very good. That's a good suggestion. Let's model that. Okay, so let's make an assumption that we're all going to go on the Lancet diet, and the Lancet diet is a lot of legumes. It's very little meat, and it dials back on the dairy. Now, let me just ask, who had made that suggestion, Ariana?
That was Janice Gitzler. I'm sorry if I pronounced your last name
Very
wrong.
good. Now, Janice, tell me, let me reset the model here. Tell me what you think the impact will be if we put everybody on the Lancet diet. And I'll make one other change, which is a land use change. We'll also make the assumption that we're going to stop using quite so much synthetic fertilizers, because that can contribute to nitrous oxide, and we'll go to no-till agriculture and make some improvements there. If we do that, Janice, give me your best guess as to what you think the impact on our end of century temperature of 3.6 degrees would be. Would it be like a tenth or 2/10 or a whole degree centigrade? What's your best guess on that?
My guess, Andrew, would be about 30%, because agriculture is so fossil fuel based.
Okay, so let's calculate. So 30%. So we're trying to get, right, we're trying to level off here. Hang on just a second. Let me pull up my temperature graph for a second. So here's our temperature projection. And what we're trying to do tonight is put our best ideas together on how to get this line to level off between 1.5 and 2 degrees centigrade, which is what the Paris Accord targets are. So let's say if we were to try to get to, let's say 1.6 degrees, that would be 2 degrees centigrade is what our group tonight is trying to reduce this to. And Janice says we're going to get a 30% improvement, which would be on 2 degrees, that would be 0.6. So Janice's prediction is that we're going to take this down from 3.6 to 3. And let's see how that works. Okay, so let me get in here. We're going to go dig deep into here, and we're going to go to our agricultural and waste emissions, which we're going to get about a 25% benefit out of by going meatless. Okay, and that's going to have a couple of other benefits to it. For one thing, we're going to get some improvement in deforestation as a result of that. We're going to get a 5% reduction in deforestation, because we're going to be cutting down less. Actually, we're going to get about 1.5% of improvement there. Let me get that to 1.5, because we're not cutting down rainforests to raise cattle. So we get an improvement there. We're also going to not be shipping as much cattle around. So we're going to get about 0.5% a boost on transportation efficiency. And in addition to that, we're going to go down here. We're going to go back into and let's see if we got. No, we got to go into another one for that. Hang on. We're going to go into carbon removal technologies, and we're going to make some changes to how we are managing our land from an agricultural standpoint. Okay, so we're going to go to those best practices there. So that basket of changes, Janice, we didn't get as far as you thought we would, but we got 10% of the way there, not 30, and that is important. So great first recommendation. Have we got any other recommendations from our group tonight? What other suggestions do we have, either in the chat box or go ahead and unmute yourself and give us a suggestion? Anything else in the chat box, Ariana?
No, not yet.
Okay. Don't be shy. We got a lot of work to do here. Throw out some suggestions. What do you think some of the big culprits are? Let me give you a hint. Okay. When we look at the problem here, from our earlier slides, all of this coal, oil, and natural gas that we're burning is part of the problem, and it's generating these greenhouse gases. The charcoal gray area here is CO2. The blue is methane release. Those are two of the biggest problems that we've got. What could we do to try to reduce these fossil fuel emissions?
We got a lot. We got some people coming in. First we have Linda. She raised her hand first.
Sure.
Oh, yes. Could we electrify our transportation?
Oh, good suggestion. Linda, what do you think might happen? What do you think the impact will be on our temperature?
Ooh.
Any guesses?
Should be worth a degree or two.
Okay. Let's see here. So, all right, we're going to electrify transportation. We're going to increase purchases of electric cars, trucks, buses, trains. We're going to try to use more electric motors in transport to try to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. And let's get aggressive and take that up to a 5% per year increase in the amount of electrification across all of our transit forms of transit. And so we see the big boost here. Let's see what that bought us. Hang on just a second. I'm going to play this back. Let's take a look at what it did over here to our fossil fuel demand, especially. Let's look at the coal, oil, natural gas, and the renewable energy as we play that back. Okay, we can see that coal is shrinking and oil is shrinking. Oh, no, I'm sorry. what has happened is coal is actually growing. Look at this. Coal usage is growing, although oil is shrinking. We are getting some growth in our renewable energy, but it's only helped us here about 1/10 of a degree. So that helped us get 5% closer to our goal, Linda, but it didn't quite get us there. And it seemed to do that because the electric cars that you're putting on the road are being powered by coal-fired power plants. I think that's what the problem is. Why you didn't get quite as much boost as maybe you thought you would get on there. So what do you think? What do you think the next logical step might be there?
Nuclear energy or some other green energy.
Some
source.
other energy. Okay. All right. So let's fire up the nukes here. And what we'll do is we'll go in and we'll subsidize nuclear energy to make it more competitive, about 7 cents per kilowatt hour. And what do we see happening in our fuel mix here? Let's go back and take a look at it. We see nuclear, the light blue is growing. We see that natural gas is shrinking a little bit. And let's see if coal is shrinking. Yep, coal is reducing. But that again only got us 1/10 of a degree. Now, I'll tell you why that's happening. Let's take a look at what's going on between 2020 and 2040. 2020 to 2040 is because we're putting 40 gigatons of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere every year in and year out. We're building up quite a deficit here. And if we can't control our fossil fuel usage between 2020 and 2040 and 2045 or so, we're not going to be able to really dramatically impact our end of century temperature. Now, the problem with nuclear is, watch what happens when I play this back. When are we having an impact on these other fuel sources?
Before 2040.
It's really after 2040, isn't it? Because it takes 5 years to do the permit, 10 years to make the plan, and then 10 years to build the things. There's really quite a long cycle to getting our current nuclear power plants approved. Maybe there's an opportunity to improve on that, but right now, in the state of the art of nuclear, it's just taking too long to help us. Doesn't mean it's a bad thing to pursue. We still need carbon-free base load energy in 2080 and beyond, but it's just not getting us there where we need to be right now. We've got to do something to try to keep coal, oil, and natural gas in the ground as much as possible in the next 20 to 25 years or so. So let's go back to your other suggestion, which was nuclear or something else. So when we look at something else, what might we do? How about if we tax coal and subsidize renewable energy? Okay. Now we've put a little bigger dent in it. So let's play that back. Okay, so let's watch what happens to our temperature and watch what happens to our coal usage here is, okay, we're bringing coal way down. And then we're, I think we got 0.2 of a degree there, and we picked up another degree on renewables, subsidizing the renewables. So that's getting us closer to our goal. Let's see if we can get to, in the remaining few minutes that we have to play with the model, let's see if we can get to 2.0 at least.
Sorry, I didn't mean, I was just letting you know, if we needed to extend to 8:30, we can. And also we have 3 other suggestions
Oh,
in,
great. Let's hear the other suggestions.
the first one I see is increase the number of electric vehicles on the road to at least 50%. And that was from Sue. I'm sorry for like butchering you guys' last name, but Giovanazzi.
Okay. So Sue wants to electrify vehicles, and what are the other suggestions?
Electric vehicles on the road to at least 50%. Sharon said to incorporate in incentives for converting industry to renewable or nuclear energy sources.
Mhm.
And Rick Swanson said, can we eliminate coal and oil from energy supply?
Okay, so all right, so we have we've really maxed out electrification of transport here. We might expect if we could take it to 50% even faster to get another 1/10 out there. But we've already promoted renewables and subsidized those. One interesting thing here is that I'd like to alert people to, because it's a systems dynamic model, is when we promote both nuclear and renewables, we don't get 1 + 1 = 2. What you'll notice is that renewables started cannibalizing our nuclear energy. Okay, so but the suggestion to go ahead and do something to try to reduce oil is one that we haven't done yet. So let's also tax our oil consumption. And for the first time, we're really seeing ourselves. Let's play that back. Okay. So we've got, after about 2040, we're taking oil down. Actually, in the late 2030s, we're taking our oil down, and that's given us another boost of 1/10 here. We're getting closer. Now, one thing we haven't really looked at yet is energy efficiency. And, you know, we're using a lot of energy. We're now using a lot of renewable energy. But you know, you can try to make vehicles and buildings more energy efficient. We can also, if we look here for clues, we still got an awful lot of methane that's going into the atmosphere, and we also have a fair amount of fossil fuel emissions that are still targets for us to try to tackle here. Let's see. So, any thoughts there on what we should tackle next?
We should tackle new construction to require that all new construction have solar panels and rooftop gardens possibly.
Okay, let's see. So rooftop gardens. So we're promoting renewables now, but if we put roofs, solar, if we put like roofs on green roofs on there, in addition to solar panels, you would get more energy efficiency out of the buildings. So let's focus on energy efficiency for the buildings, including trying to make those buildings more energy efficient, and adding energy efficiency to that suggestion, as well as rooftop solar and garden roofs. And that's a big one. That's a big one. If we can make use a variety of different tools to make buildings more energy efficient. And if we could electrify those buildings so that the solar panels that we're putting on the roofs are helping to power those buildings, we've gotten a big boost there. Okay, so that was a very high leverage set of activities that we've done around building and industry. Okay, and that has helped us really tail off our fossil fuel usage and really put it on a downward trajectory here in the 2040 range, even peaking in 2030. So these are good suggestions. Now, we still haven't done much. If we look, let's take another shot here at seeing what we can do with methane. What if we try to tackle methane from fracking and other industry emissions? You know, I've seen reports that just getting natural gas to our houses and our buildings, I've seen leakage projections as low as 1%, but also as high as 7% of methane leakage. And we know that we do not have a very well regulated natural gas emissions program for regulating leakage from our wells from fracking. So let's try to shoot for a 50% reduction through regulation there and see what that does for us. So if we play that back, yeah, we got a little bit of a boost there from reducing methane.
Someone actually put in a suggestion to ban fracking, I think just altogether.
Okay, then that would give us even a little bit bigger boost. Let's go back into it and jack that up a little bit more.
And there was also a suggestion to have a requirement that all new buildings incorporate solar panels and rooftop gardens.
Okay, we captured that one. We got that one already. So that's good. That was Janice's. Okay, so we're down to 2.2. Let's see if there's anything else we can do to try to, any other last suggestions. See if you can bring us home to at least 2.0 and meet the upper end of the Paris Agreement.
Change public transportation so it doesn't all go into the city, but it goes suburb to suburb.
Yeah, that might buy us another 1/10. We've already maxed out our lever on electrification of transport. But how about if we try to tackle deforestation and maybe try to stop cutting down as many trees as we do. That would give us another boost there if we could get about a 60% reduction there. And then any last ideas here? We're at 2.1, we're almost there.
Make beef illegal because they expel methane with every breath.
Okay, so that would be another agricultural waste emission, and that got us half a degree, but not quite all the way there yet. But let's see. So we're about a half a degree Fahrenheit away from our goal. Any other ideas?
In Q and oh wait, oh, someone was just thanking you, by the way. They said thank you for everything, and that it was very informative. Also, someone suggested that if we could reduce some natural gas.
Yeah, absolutely. So we could tax, put a tax on natural gas. Bingo, we got there. Congratulations. It wasn't easy, but we got there. And we had to move a lot of levers to do that. We had to tackle industrial and agricultural methane. We had to tackle land use. We took 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. We took 13 separate actions. But we got down to the upper end of the Paris Agreement, and I want to take a minute. I'm going to show you some legislation that's very powerful in helping us get to where we want to go. And first, I want to congratulate you for a lot of great suggestions in helping us get there. This can be done. We can get this done. Now, as we found out, some activities are more impactful than others. And I'm going to show you some legislation that I've programmed into this. And what we did in our scenario is we taxed coal, we taxed oil, we taxed natural gas separately. And then we tried to promote nuclear energy and renewables. And I want to show you a piece of legislation that we call carbon fee and dividend legislation, but it's carbon pricing. That instead of taxing barrels of oil and tons of coal and the actual natural gas itself, we tax the emissions of the natural gas, and it starts slow. It starts at $15 a ton, but then it goes up $10 a ton every year from now on, okay? And that would be the equivalent to about 10 cents on or 15 cents on a gallon of gas in year one, and then 10 cents every year after, and it'd have about the same impact on your natural gas bill and on your electric bill if you were from a coal-fired power plant. So that one piece of action dropped us from 3.6 to 2.6, a full degree centigrade. It's the single most powerful lever there. And then if we follow up with methane, and let me just jump back to our greenhouse gas emissions slides here. So we've so let's tackle methane now, both in agriculture and in industry is aggressively as we can in 3 moves: agricultural methane, industrial methane leakage, and a carbon price. In 3 moves, we've gotten down to 2.2 degrees. And now we can try to tackle some deforestation, and we can tackle building and energy efficiency and electrification. So we know that this was a high leverage activity, building industry, electrification and efficiency. We learned that with your team. And then if we do the carbon pricing, which tackles all 3 of these in one fell swoop, and then try to focus on deforestation, and then really work hard on methane. We've taken 5 or 6 actions and accomplished the same thing that we did with by the way, I just wanted to mention that, that Trillion Tree program has the same problem as nuclear energy. By the time you acquire the land to plant 1 trillion trees, which would require the land of the United States and China, and then wait 50 years for the trees to grow after you've acquired them and gone to the trouble of planting them, you're really not getting an impact until way out here. So not a reason not to do it, because planting trees is good, but to try to get a rapid response on climate change, it helped us 1/10 of a degree is all on that subject. But anyway, this is the model. I'm going to actually include in the chat box this model, but first I want to get your impressions. Let me stop share and get your impressions on what your thoughts are. First of all,
Andrew, you've disabled the chat.
Ariana, can you help us enable the chat box?
Sorry. I thought when I was answering it in the Q&A, I thought I was able to actually get, like, the answers were showing up, but we were having issues in the past with the chat, so that's why we had the Q&A. So I'm opening it up for everyone. Like, if someone needs to talk, I'm allowing them to speak.
Yes,
right
okay.
now.
I got you. Yeah. Okay. So we're using the Q&A to get into that. That's great. Okay. So any impressions on you got the job done. There might have been a few more efficient ways to do it, but you got there. And any feelings that you have on the world being a better place by virtue of what you've done, or also any insights that you have gained from using the models? Are there any tools there that, or any thoughts there that you can share with the group in terms of what your feelings are about having been able to do this, or any learnings that you might have gleaned from using this model?
Andy, I found it quite interesting, and it's hard to appreciate the time lag between making a decision and having it affect the final result. One of the things that I was interested in asking was putting lots more kelp into the ocean to absorb carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. But I think just like the trees, it might be a slow process.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, and not a reason not to do it, right? but just maybe not one that we would want to, kind of put all our eggs in that basket, expecting it like to be the silver bullet. I think that was one of the insights that I got from this model, is that there's not a silver bullet, but there is silver buckshot. There's some of those things are pretty high leverage that we did, and we may have to do a few of them to get there, but clearly some are going to get us there faster than others. Let me pop back into the PowerPoint slide for a second. I want to tell you a little bit more about this carbon fee. Not everybody might be knowledgeable about carbon fee and dividend. Let me tell you how that works. And I'll just share screen here for a minute. Okay, so congratulations, by the way, on getting us where we needed to be. We're trying, one of the pieces of legislation that Citizens Climate Education, Citizens Climate Lobby is behind is called the Energy Innovation and Carbon Dividend Act. And what that does is that puts on the fossil fuel companies, a fee is placed on their carbon emissions. It starts out at $10 or $15 a ton, and then it's $10 a ton every year after that. Small, but increases every year. And what that does is that's collected by the Treasury Department, and then that goes out to every household as a monthly dividend check. So we're not trying to punish oil, gas, and coal companies. What we're trying to do is we're trying to get fossil fuels to reflect their true cost. Because the problem is that through every year we subsidize fossil fuels, tens of billions of dollars, and fossil fuel companies never pay a nickel for the environmental damages of their products. So now fossil fuels will start to reflect more of their true cost. And what that will do is that will level the playing field for clean energy to compete, like renewables, wind and solar. And then that will also trigger, that pricing signal will trigger a torrent of investment in clean energy. And then clean energy will become cheaper than fossil fuel energy, and consumers will switch to cheaper clean energy. And that will reduce greenhouse gas emissions. So one of the reasons that we like carbon fee and dividend is because it keeps the money in the economy at the consumer level. It's not like the tax that who knows what the government is going to spend it on. Okay, it keeps the money in the economy because it's going directly to the households from the and it protects low and middle income households from economic harm by giving them 100% of the fee that's collected from the fossil fuel companies, and it encourages innovation. We'll inject more innovation into the economy by doing this than you can shake a stick at, and it ensures transparency and visibility on pricing, and people will like it because they'll like getting the checks. So there was a survey done of U.S. economists, in unprecedented. We had over 3,500 U.S. economists of all political stripes suggest that a carbon tax where you give the money back to the U.S. households offers the most cost-effective lever to reduce carbon emissions at the scale and at the speed that is necessary, both conservative and liberal economists. So once again, when you hear the word carbon tax, and especially if it's being collected and redistributed back to US households, this is the legislation that we need to be behind. Coal, oil, and gas companies pay the fee, the Treasury Department collects it, and what that would mean to a family of four, 2 adults, 2 children. In year one, those dividend checks would add up to about $800. That's going to cover a lot of increased 15-cent per gallon gasoline. In year 5, because the fee goes up every year, that would be $3,000. And in year 10, $4,000. Now, is that free money? No, these guys are going to raise their prices. And they're going to pass that on, and energy intensive products are going to go up. But these fees will cover that. But if a consumer decides to try to be more energy efficient, or get a car that gets better gas mileage, or get energy efficient appliances, or switch from coal-fired power to community solar, they're going to be able to pocket savings from that. So there's an opportunity to save at the same time while we're lowering our emissions over the next 12 years by 40%. There's an opportunity for job growth, and not just in the renewable energy sector. Those monthly dividend checks act like stimulus and can trigger other sorts of jobs, especially in healthcare and other areas where people have a little more money to spend. But it also puts a dent in that $240 billion annual environmental and healthcare costs. So, and we remain competitive and encourage other countries to do the same thing we're doing by border adjustment language that's in the legislation. And, we didn't talk about the lives that are lost each year, but there's about 114,000 premature deaths each year, and that number will go up. Think about all the people that were breathing that befouled air in California this summer, and the healthcare consequences of that. But primarily, this is not a program that's going to grow the size of government. It's a revenue neutral program because the fossil fuel companies are paying the fee, and so it's not increasing the national debt. So we have a lot of congressional representatives that have gotten behind this, but we need about twice as many as we have. And that's where your help can come in. We need to be talking about this. We need to be talking about the type of legislation that's really going to make an impact, like carbon fee and dividend, or our own legislation, the Energy Innovation Act. I'm going to put links in the chat box where you can find out more about this legislation, how you can call your congressman. We'd love to see you call them once a month. We'd love to see you or write them once a month, but they need to be hearing from you about it. And you can join advocacy groups like Citizens Climate Lobby. But I think we want to emphasize more than anything else that we have a path forward to fix this. This is not all gloom and doom, but we don't have a lot of time to waste. There's good news happening out there, that people are starting to understand that this is a priority issue and that we need to do something about it. And countries and states are starting to step up, and the general public is becoming more engaged. And with your help, we'll let our politicians get more engaged. We'll open it up to discussion. I'll put my contact information in the chat box for you. But great job using the simulator to get the job done. And let's open it up for questions. And let me put some of this information in the chat box for you to copy. So If you have questions, you know where to reach me. And let's see if I can get the chat box to work here as a co-host here. Hang on. But any comments or questions on any of the stuff that we've been talking about, or any of the insights that you have from using this powerful simulator? By the way, I put the simulator in the website or on the chat box so that you can access it and play with it and find out more about it yourself.
Actually, 5 questions in the Q&A. I'm not sure if you're able to see them, but there are 5 questions listed.
Okay, let me tackle those. Okay. Okay, so yes, taxing oil, emissions of oil and gas are the way to go. Thank you, Janice. Linda, the model is fascinating. So many variables. It seems possible that the new cleaner nuclear energy plant, yes, could be up and running before 2040. That would be huge. Yeah, that would be huge if you can get smaller plants that are quicker to permit, faster to build, bring that power online before 2040. It can have a real impact. I have to state the obvious. One thing that most people do not want to look at is population control. It doesn't matter if every person cuts their carbon footprint. That is interesting. I would like to tackle that one with you. Hang on, and we'll come back to that one. What is the bill number of the bill that you're recommending? Okay, the bill was HR 763, but that bill is in the process of being reintroduced. So it will have a new bill number. Just remember it in the chat box as the Energy Innovation and Carbon Dividend Act. Thanks, Rick. We can reach the goal of 2 degrees if there is political will to do so. That's so important, because that means we have to be calling our congressional representatives to do that. So we had this interesting a comment about population, and I'm surprised that it didn't come up, because that is often one of the first things that people request. And let's pull that back up for a second and see if we can gauge the impact of that. I'm going to jump to a new brand new screen, and let's look at population growth. So what this enables us to do is, this is projecting from the UN that will be at 10.9 billion people in 2100. And let's take that down to 9.1 billion. That's a big jump. That's a 1.7 billion person reduction, or like a 17, maybe a 15% reduction in population growth. Now let's see what it did for us. Okay, let's look at the fossil fuel usage. Okay, it comes down. Looks like everything is kind of coming down a little bit on there. And then the 3.5 degrees, really it only bought us a tenth. We reduced population 15%, but it only brought us down a tenth. So I'm going to tell you why I think that happened. If you look at the population and what it is today, or what it's expected to be, today the population is 8 billion people, or almost 8 billion. But the first 2 billion people are driving almost 50% of the carbon emissions. And the next 2 billion people are driving somewhere in the neighborhood of 38 to 42% of it. So we may not have as much of a population problem as we do a consumption problem with the top half, the richest half of the world. So so if we gave birth control out to all the third world people, you know, it's not going to have that big of an impact, because we've got a billion people that are only impacting climate emissions by 0.5%. So it's not them that's the problem. It's us. So that's why I think we didn't get quite as much of a bang, because where the population is likely to be reduced the most, since it is in the fastest growing areas where the poorest people are, who are not driving the majority of the climate change. Sorry about that. I wanted to, I thought that was an important insight to share with folks. But any other questions or comments before we jump off here? I want to thank you all for being on tonight, and great questions, great suggestions, and don't forget to call your congressional representatives and try to reach out to them once a month. And if you have any questions, you have my contact information. Don't forget to copy and paste the good information that's in the chat box, and don't hesitate to reach out to me if you have any questions or comments on the subject. That's what we're here for. And if you're looking to get more active, think about investigate Citizens Climate Lobby and see if what we're doing is of interest to you. We'd love to have you on the team. We need a lot more action in this area than we currently have, and to get the job done. And it's such an important job to do. It won't be easy, but it'll be worth it. Thanks everybody for being a part of this presentation tonight, and take good care. Thanks, Ariana, for putting this together for us.
No problem. And once again, thank you. And thank you everyone for coming out. And for anyone who is watching online after this, we do have one more program is coming up in April, correct?
Yes.
Yes.
Right.
We have the Lancet series in April. So stay
Yeah.
tuned for that one to complete everything. And if you have any questions, if you weren't able to get the information off the chat, feel free to email at Outreach and I will send you all the links. I have it copied.
Thanks, everybody. And take good care. And we'll be having another presentation that's a little different than this. It's a panel discussion on April 7th, Wednesday. Thanks again, everybody. Bye now.
Bye.